afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to OTL 2020 session on downstream gas investment from assets to markets. This session will focus on operator strategies to unbundle the continent's underexplored gas treasure trove with the aim of attracting investment through its multiple market entry and expansion options. This session will focus on operator strategies to unbundle the continent's underexplored gas treasure trove with the aim of attracting investment through its multiple market entry and expansion options. The moderator for this session is Shola Arifaya, lead, Oak Legal's public sector, project finance and energy and utilities teams. He is recognized for his intricate knowledge of substantive and procedural law, as well as his understanding of clients' businesses and the critical parameters for their success. Also a chartered accountant and fellow of both the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Shola has been recognized as a leading lawyer by both IFLR 1000 and Who's Who Legal. Speakers for this session are Mr. Akintunde Adelano, Director, Monitoring and Evaluation, Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, NCDMB. Mr. Adelano is a management graduate of the University of Benin and a professional member of the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply, CIPS UK. He is a highly skilled and versatile professional with over 25 years' experience in supply chain management and in the oil and gas industry. Before joining the board in 2011, he worked for over 2 decades in Shell Nigeria and was involved in the design and implementation of business solutions, logistics and procurement, tender management, cost-saving initiatives, amongst others. At the board, Mr. Delano has been responsible for leading the very important monitoring and evaluation mandate of the board. He has been credited with the new tempo and strategies the board now adopts in ensuring that every project is monitored effectively from conceptualization to closeout, making sure that all operators, multinationals, and local service companies comply with the objectives and provisions of the NOJIC Act 2010 in their operations. Mr. Dayo Adeshina, Program Manager, National LPG Expansion and Implementation Plan. He has over 25 years' experience in various industries which include oil and gas, power and telecommunication. He is currently an Industry Council member of the World LP Gas Association, board member of the African Energy Association, and member of the Energy Institute, London. Program Manager, National LPG Expansion and Implementation Plan, Office of the Vice President of Nigeria. Mr. Nuhu Yakubu, President, Nigerian Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association. He is a seasoned energy and power business development and management expert with over 20 years industry experience. He has hands-on multi-sector experience cutting across the energy sector upstream, downstream, as well as in the power sector of Nigeria. He is also a Justice of the Peace. Mrs. Audrey Joe Ezigbo, President, Nigeria Gas Association, the umbrella association and voice for businesses and professionals involved in the Nigerian gas industry. She is the first female president of the NGA in the association's over 21-year history. She is also the deputy managing director of Falcon Corporation Limited, a company which she co-founded with her husband in 1994. She is a chartered member of the International Gas Union and a certified transformative coach and member of the International Coach Federation. Mr. Oladapo Olatunbosun, National Deputy President of the Nigeria Association of Liquefied Petroleum Gas Marketers. He is also the Managing Director, Dapnic Gas. He holds a BSc degree in Banking and Finance and is a Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, also a chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Mr. Oluwasegun Olajuwon, Chief Executive Officer, THLD Group Nigeria. He delved into buying and selling of trucks, plants, and machineries within and outside United Kingdom before diversifying into logistics, with special focus on LPG and CNG trucks. This gave birth to THLD International Logistics Limited, which has now grown to become THLD Group. He studied accounting at Nuhu Bamali Polytechnic, Kaduna, and information systems at Kent College, United Kingdom.
Aspects of our topic, they're going to give a broad overview of issues that are critical and that are important for the conversation that we're about to have. Right after that segment, we'll take a few audience questions and then go into the second segment, which is a more interactive Q&A session. Essentially, we're discussing amongst ourselves, asking follow-up questions from everything we've heard, and then also taking questions from myself as moderator and from our distinguished audience as well. Finally, we'll have a wrap-up, take closing remarks from each of the moderators. So to our audience as well, I say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for attending. I'm sure all of us will gain great insights from this session. Please remember as we go along to drop your questions in the Q&A box. And so I'll turn over the session right now to Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo to give us our introductory remarks.
Thank you very much, Shola. A very good afternoon to you, to my fellow distinguished panelists and everyone who is listening. My name is Audrey Jo Ezigbo. As has been said, I am the Deputy Managing Director for Falcon Corporation Limited, and I'm also the President of the Nigerian Gas Association. I believe that the topic today is very timely. The focus is on gas in Nigeria, as we all know, and the reasons for this are pretty clear. Now, for many years, we have, as a nation, focused on the export gas market. And what this has meant is that really we have been leveraging our resources to develop other economies. And the time is more than ripe for us to then begin to look inwards. As a country, and as many of us may know, we have over 203.16 trillion cubic feet of gas and another about 600 trillion cubic feet of unproven reserves. But like I said, we are not seeing the impact of this. However, in the past few years, the topic of gas has become more and more of an imperative. And why is this so? Very simply, it is because we see gas as that resource that we can leverage on to build economic diversity, to build resilience in the economy. It was shown that most of the economies that use gas, that have a huge and robust domestic gas market, they were a bit more immune to the twin shocks of the pandemic and the oil price crash that has happened in the last year. And so we as well need to be looking at that, how to build more robust domestic gas markets. Now, there is also the imperative from the power point of view. As you know, as a nation, we are over 200 million people. And at best, we are producing about 5 gigawatts of power, whereas by the United Nations standard, we are supposed to be producing at least 200 gigawatts because the standard is 1 gigawatts per 1 million people. So you see, it shows you that there's a lot of work to be done. And currently, we're in a nation where almost 80% of our power generation is thermal power, is gas-fired. And gas is the first resource that we can very quickly leverage to ramp up the power position in the country. Of course, there's also huge multiplier effects that must be considered in the sense that you can leverage gas in industry, in homes, the power sector. So for industries, for instance, if you think about gas-based industrialization, where we're using our gas as feedstock to add value to products and then export them. So first of all is that we are creating revenues. So economic rent is there, taxes, levies, and all that. But at the same time, we are creating employment. And that is a huge socio-economic imperative for the nation. So this is really, just a few of the reasons why there is such a huge focus. Of course, we are constrained by infrastructure. And so again, like I said, this is a timely conversation because when we look at what will enable us attain the depth of market that is important, infrastructure is a huge conversation, as well, of course, as the regulatory, the legislative frameworks, and that general investment environment. So just to wrap it up and say that at this point in time, as Nigerians, we have come to the place of recognizing that we have the resource, we have the market potential, we have the interest in gas, generally speaking, more understanding, more interest. And this is the best time through conversations such as will be happening today for us to then see how to bring it all together and move Nigeria indeed to that gas-based industrialized nation, which is the aspiration as enshrined in the National Gas Policy of 2017. And I'm going to leave it at that for now, Shola. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think two key things that jumped at me from what Mrs. Joy Zigo has said is the fact that despite our very huge gas reserves, we're exporting more of our production that we're using locally, and so we're spending, we're essentially using our natural resources to develop other markets. She's also mentioned that there's a bit of infrastructure as well as regulatory environment challenges. We'll probably just go on to our next speaker, Mr. Anuo Yakubu.
Good afternoon to my able associates and industry experts here gathered, and to the global community listening to all of us. I'll just I'll take it from where Mrs. Audrey Ezigbo left it, to just add that it has now become a necessity that we tow import substitution strategies. All right. So to that effect, we really need to enable seamless substitution in a manner that would task all of us as industry players vis-a-vis the strategies we're going to be that we should be towing between government and the private sector, the policies that we should be towing, the programs that we should be towing, and the regulations that we should be reviewing that will enable this a very important need for import substitution to begin to apply our own natural endowments for our people rather than export our resources to empower foreign countries. And to do that, there's actually need for a lot of work in the downstream because it is the downstream that establishes the handshake with Nigerians. The downstream is the one that establishes a handshake with the local players, the users of gas, or the users of other forms of energy resources. And how do we deliver these energy resources, gas resources, to the market in a manner that is cost effective for them and their businesses, in a manner that is accessible, in a manner that is affordable, will inform some of my remarks and the presentations I'll be making in the course of today's deliberations. Thank you very much.
I think we'll get an overview from Mr. Oluwasegun Olajumo about the use of gas for the automotive sector, and we're talking about what kind of gas, LPG, LNG, CNG, what are the opportunities, what are the technology and infrastructure challenges. So, Mr. Olajumo.
Yeah, thank you very much. We want to stand on the existing protocol. Welcome everyone to this great event. My name is Oluwasegun Olajumo from THL Group. As has been said by the two speakers about gas and its features and its benefit, I'll be talking more about the use of gas for the vehicular use for light duty, medium duty, and heavy duty vehicles, whereby we can adopt the use of either LPG, LNG, or CNG, or regasification of LNG in areas where there is no CNG network or pipelines. So I'll be going into the best kind of gas for the best engines, and also talking about the industrial machineries that can obviously make a switch to a cheaper fuel, which is gas. And I'll be touching base on infrastructures as well. I'll be touching base on conversion centers for these engines to run on gas. And I'll also be touching base on pricing, which is very key. One of the major problems we've encountered in Nigeria in terms of pricing. But we later found out that, to be honest, there are some specific gas that we don't even need to use for auto gas because it will not be commercial viable for gas to be introduced, because for gas to succeed, it has to be cheaper than PMS. So I'll be touching base on all of these things to have a very good understanding on how to adopt gas as an alternative fuel, and with what we have done in other countries and with my knowledge in the industry of gas, auto gas. I'm talking about auto gas now because auto gas is different from gas. So with my knowledge in auto gas, either the NGV, I'll be touching base on all of these things on how once all these gas that has been mentioned, how we can obviously get them to the end users, and we can safely install them in vehicles and perfectly run on any of these LPG, CNG, or LNG. So yeah, I'll be talking more of all of these as we get through this event. So yeah, I think that's it for now from me. And once we go into the next stage, we can talk more about it. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wajo. I'm sure myself, definitely, even if it's in terms of let me understand how I can run my Corolla on gas rather than petrol. And I'm sure many members of our audience, including downstream operators, they run filling and petrol stations, won't understand why is this an option, what do we need to be able to operate in this regard. Mr. Olajuwon, you mentioned that you've got quite a bit of experience across, I believe you mentioned, I think maybe Ghana, about natural gas vehicles. Can you tell us what you're doing in that regard, in that regard in Nigeria, and how the opportunity is in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't hear it clearly, but I'll just zoom and go on. Yeah, for the Nigerian market, it's been a difficult one in terms of the introduction of the use of gas, because again, gas must be affordable. And credit to the likes of Nuhu has really given us an opportunity to buy gas from facilities of theirs that can offer gas refueling. And again, we need to have refueling stations at strategic locations, which is a major thing. And also, Madam Audrey, we've had 1 or 2 meetings with her, which she's also looking to support the use of gas for vehicular purpose. The conversion part of it is what we are good at. We can retrofit all kinds of engine, any kind of engine, to run on either LPG, CNG, or for the likes of trucks, LNG. So we've done quite a lot of market sensitization in whereby we encourage the use of gas, but again, the price must be good. The price ain't great, but yeah, the regulation, subsidy removal, probably, might encourage the use of gas, but we still have, we're making progress, but we still have quite a lot of moves to make. The other thing I've also found out is the combination of the LPG, which is a propane-butane mix. We also have our reservation in the use of that. We'll rather use pure propane, either at 95% or 80%. That will give us the best option for refueling cars. And again, that will also reduce the competitiveness between the use of gas for cooking and gas for auto gas. So yeah, we've done quite a lot of awareness. We've done quite a few conversion for transport companies, the likes of Chisco, Ife Sinachi, God is Good Motors. We've engaged all of these guys, and they need refueling point at strategic locations, which is also a major thing. And again, there's also the fare of gas, which again, as far as I can remember, everyone believes is dangerous. But again, we understand the reason being why people have this reservation of the use of gas is because of lack of knowledge. So we also have justified the safety of gas, because in every conversion we do, we have the safety measures in place, the likes of the multi-valves, the likes of the sensors, the shorting valve. There's quite a lot of things that the last thing that will happen to a gas-powered car, again, if there will be any form of accident that will happen, is the same thing that will happen to petrol powered, and the same applies to gas powered. In fact, it's even safer on gas because of the tank. It's a thicker tank, and once there's any heat or any kind of collision, the gas runs back into the tank and it shoots the gas into the tank. So we are working on the awareness. We're doing more on the awareness, and we're believing with time, with support from every other companies involved, we'll be able to put that across to Nigerians, and gas will be alternative. It's successful all over the world. The likes of Turkey, they have quite reasonable amount of gas powered, and other countries in Europe, even in Asia. So we believe with the moves we've been making and with the support from the industry players, we'll be able to achieve gas usage, either CNG for light duty medium, or LNG for heavy duty trucks, or even LPG, which is best for petrol engines. So those are the options, and those are the fights, and those are the moves we've been making for the past few years in the Nigerian market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Olajuwon. There are three core points that I hear in what you've said to us, and I'm going to tell you to hold one of them, which was around your thinking about the various gas products, whether it be LPG, LNG, propane, butane, as to fuels. I think we'll come back to that in a minute. But you also did speak, I believe, as to one, what I'll call upstream supply. I'm not saying upstream in the usual upstream of the nature of the world in this industry. I'm talking about the supplier of gas to the person that then retails it to vehicle owners. What I hear you say, for example, is that you've engaged with Mr. Yakubu's company, for example, about the opportunity of getting a supply and ensuring that supply is readily available. You've also alluded to pricing. Again, that's another thought I want us to hold, because I think it's extremely important for industry players to understand how the investment is impacted by government's policy as regards the pricing of gas. But my question from here will go to Mr. Yakubu. And what I'm asking is, so I believe your business, and then in your work as well as what I would say your volunteering work as a president of the LPG Association, you've come across sort of the whole range of the value sector of the value chain for gas to market in Nigeria. Can you give us a broad overview, and then speaking in particular, touching on, for example, how from upstream to the market, things like how gas gets to LPG retailing to the domestic market, how it gets to retailing to NGV market, for example. Can you just give us a broad overview of that?
Thank you very much. The value chain is quite an interesting one in Nigeria, from LPG to market, or whether it's natural gas to market. The LPG to market is being one that domestically, sourcing it domestically will be from some of the major producers like the NLNG and some of the onshore producers. Just a few volumes we get from the onshore producers, and then largely by trucking, except for NLNG, who will usually deliver its cargoes via shipping to coastal terminals and dotting the coastal lines of Lagos, Apapa region, and then these days a few of those terminals coming up in the Niger Delta axis as well, and then it's essentially delivered via trucking to filling plants across the country for purpose of filling this gas into LPG cylinders for onward distribution to homes. And then also there's been a new wave now in the area of autogas. I believe you spoke, your line was cracking, but I think you spoke about NGVs, that's natural gas vehicles. There are also been very interesting initiatives in gas-fueled or autogas opportunities. We now have quite a number of fleet operators, Dangote, Ifesinachi, Chisco, like Laju once spoke about, where that have embraced the use of gas over the predominant fuels that we have known, including petrol or diesel. And they have seen the benefits of gas over petrol or diesel in their operations, cost saving wise and what have you. So apple for apple, you begin to compare, you find that gas price beats the competing fuels hands down, apple for apple. And then when you then add additional value like preserving the quality of engines and then environmental friendliness, so it just completes the story. We, for example, at Bana, have done some work before on gas for power, LPG for power. The natural gas for power is a big story. It's one that we don't need to speak too much about because it's a predominant story in the market. But LPG for power has been quite an interesting story. It's a developing story. We've had costs to convert some of the telcos, cell sites, their gas, their power generating facilities to run on gas, and it's been good news. Over 20-30% cost savings for them on gas over diesel. And then it also saves them the trouble of pilfering, because there's a lot of pilfering that goes on with white products like diesel and petrol for firing up these small generating sets. Equally, the case of theft. There have been many cases where generating sets at cell sites, telco cell sites, are completely stolen. They even kill the guards. So it's an emerging story. It's an emerging opportunity for anybody who wants to engage to take up. And then, but importantly, it's good for us to mention the need now also for how do we deploy these systems. How do we deploy gas facilities in a manner that becomes accessible to our people, to end users? As you all may know, the gas regime is highly regulated. The gas sector is highly regulated. It's not an all-commerce game. But how do we lower the barrier in a manner that you don't compromise on safety? It's a very big topic on our minds, on our desk. We're pulling ourselves together across the industry to see how we can continue to, while deepening the market, ensure that safety is not compromised. So there are a lot of training programs going on. At PGA level, we do a lot of training technicians and fitters, and just basically on A to Z, ABC of gas use and gas installations. And then maintenance, gas systems maintenance, gas systems operations, and what have you. And also giving them the sense of pride to be members and players in the gas value chain. For example, the truck drivers, if you observe the incidents, the fire incidents and explosion incidents you have had, we have experienced in the LPG space, has been largely due to loss of containment arising from filling operations, truck filling or discharge operations into filling plants. All right. It is usually in that process, all right, of how do you discharge gas to a plant in a manner that is safe, all right, that is meets best global standards, that has been somewhat compromised to the extent that it's beginning to give a lot of trouble to all of us. But now that it has become what it is, we're happy that the regulators are now listening to some of our recommendations as to how these things should be done. And then to that effect, we have a joint working committee with the membership of the DPR as a major regulator, the SON as a major regulator, with NLPJ co-chairing as a co-chair of that committee, and all the key players in the LPG value chain, including the plant owners, including advocates, engineers. All right. So how do we resolve these issues? OEM representatives, so that how do we speak to OEM representatives to understand that it's not really about delivering and it's not really about making profits from sale of equipment. We also have a responsibility. We have to self-regulate ourselves in a manner that will be responsible to the people we intend to serve. All right. So much so that you can actually engage your OEM support companies as to the minimum quality of systems and equipment that can be acceptable in the Nigerian market. There's also been issues around quality of gas. You heard Joanne also spoke about quality of gas. Recently, the NIS 555, I think, SON NIS 555, which speaks to quality of gas, has been expanded to include autogas, properly defining the composition of LPG that fits into autogas. Now, natural gas is not a problem, but autogas has been a challenge. LPG autogas, because we predominantly trade butane spec out or LPG in Nigeria, and that is what has been largely available to propel autogas expansion in Nigeria. It's not as if autogas, butane, autogas, or butane spec LPG will not fly. It's not as if it doesn't work. All the auto vehicles we have converted in Nigeria thus far are running fine on butane, but they will do better with propane gas, propane spec LPG. And then that means that it then takes us back to the quality of equipment we're going to be allowing, or the spec of equipment we're going to be deploying in the market, because we have to be sure that the quality of systems that we deploy, because of the vapor pressure that comes with propane, we have to naturally then ensure that there's a minimum standard for LPG. Because once you do this blend, you can say, well, there's a 50-50 blend or 50-60 blend, but we have to just at least maintain, even as a minimum, maybe propane spec systems, vapor systems in the market, so that in the event that anybody will apply a system for whether it's propane or butane, at least you're sure that there's not going to be any explosion on anybody's face. On the natural gas side, it's been very good news. The natural gas players are doing very well. A lot of natural gas players have come in either by way of LNG deployment to fuel for auto gas purposes or power generation, or even CNG deployment for vehicular use and for auto gas use and what have you. There's a lot of deepening and expansion going on across the country, sourcing the gas from the Niger Delta axis, where you predominantly fetch this gas, and deploying it up to the far north these days, as we know it. And then we're happy, and most of us players in that space also are aspiring to continue to do things the right way, to continue to reach out to hinterlands in a manner that is cost effective and justifies our investment. Now, it then for you, LPG, so gas systems are not cheap. These are heavy ticket transactions. It means that for you to be able to deploy gas systems, there has to be demand justification, and the demand justification has to be triggered by policies of government, programs of government. I believe when Mr. Dayo Adesina speaks later today, he'll probably lend his thoughts to what government is doing vis-a-vis programs. But I'll tell you what we have done on the program side and policy side. We have managed to reduce, apply pressure on government, and have gotten government to accept the need for policy shift, fiscal policy shift, by way of a duty waiver for LPG equipment, LPG infrastructure build out. And it's not all Uhuru yet, because accessing these waivers is still an issue, but at least there's some meeting of minds between government and the industry. So with duty waiver off, that's almost shaving off 25 to 30% of your infrastructure costs if you're to deploy. All right, that's real big news, and we hope a lot of our viewers today or audience today will take advantage of that. And then also been issues bordering on, for example, VAT removal on LPG as a product. All right, and then don't forget that regulators are still there. Regulators we used to have issues with regulators in the past where they would not even allow us apply the language, the terminology, self-regulation. But all that has changed now, where even the regulators are helping us and helping to promote our self-regulatory language and balance and programs. To the extent now that we have been able to launch the self-audit checklist, safety checklist, we call it a safety audit checklist, that enables us, even before a regulator comes to you, you should be able to have a minimum checklist that enables you to know exactly what you're doing, whether your system meets the minimum quality or not. So that it's not a case of going around to shut down people. every asset that has been deployed into Nigeria should be allowed to serve the people. Accessing foreign exchanges is not cheap. It's not easy. So what we need to do, rather than go around and massively shutting down people, what we've asked the government and regulators to do is go around and do safety audit checks, do a compliance monitoring. Can we just go around as an industry, collaboration between the industry and regulators, and do compliance monitoring across the industry, and then advise our members and our association, our players, to say, look, whether they are members or not members, look, this is what you're not doing right in your facility. Up your game. We're giving you 5, 6 months, 3 months. It depends on the gravity and of severity of the faults we have observed, and then give it that timeline to fix it. But if after that timeline you're not able to fix it, they will say, oh, you need to be shut down for the good of your around you. I think we'll leave it at this for now. I'll be happy to take more questions if you ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive, I'll say, explanation. Again, there are a number of things that I'd want to hold on to that hopefully we'll have time to come back to later. You've talked about, I think it's extremely important, and Mrs. Joezigo, I probably will come back to you on this in a minute, about self-regulation and a closer association between government and then self-regulatory, and then the associations that play in the sector. So please, we'll come back to that in a minute. Also, there are a number of things that you said I think are extremely important. I think Sayako talked about the fact that quite a bit of energy use is still imported. They talked about whilst we're doing quite a bit of development and expansion, the natural gas still the few challenges of the market. And this, I think, is a good thing to bring in Mr. Additional, who is the program manager for the National LPG Expansion Plan. Mr. Additional, please, I would like you generally to talk about what the plan is, to tell us how this plan is different from the Nigerian Gas Expansion Program, and then also to speak to things about how much we're importing, and in terms of LPG and just generally, and what we're doing with regards to closing the, so to speak, the production gap, whilst we're still trying to expand offtake. And then after that, I'll take I have a comment from someone in the audience. I'll mention that. And please, if anyone in the audience also has questions about any of the previous things we've been told, or to the current speaker, please remember, drop it in the Q&A box. So, Mr. Additional, over to you, please. Mr. Additional, whilst we're waiting on Mr. Additional, let me take a question, rather a comment that we have from a member of the audience, Dede Kaduri. And it's first thanking Mrs. Joezigo on our submission on the gas sector. She believes that the policy environment is being developed and the investment opportunities are growing. Yes, indeed, that's what all the speakers have been telling us, and that we're yet to surface, we're yet to scratch the surface in that industry. And our opinion is that it's important to improve data, so that also, but the one item of data that she quotes, and which I really would like Mr. Additional to speak to, is the fact that despite our decades-old, I call it dominance in the petroleum sector, we're still doing less LPG penetration than countries like Ghana, and despite the fact that Nigeria has a more dense population, and like I said, we've been producing gas for a very long time. Mr. Yakubu spoke to the need for industry players to self-regulate. I'm also aware that, so on this panel, we're privileged to have the president of the Nigerian Gas Association, of the Nigerian LPG Association, and also of, I believe, Downstream Marketers Association. So, Mr. Joezigo, the question I have for you is, that's one. Two also is that Mr. Yakubu did mention that what's also important is that the market has to be available in scale. So my questions are twofold. What are we doing? with a view to one, promoting more gas adoption in the market, and two, how is your association, for example, the Young Gas Association, working with government to ensure that the policies and programs that improve penetration are adopted?
All right, thank you, Shola. So yes, Nuhu spoke extensively on this issue of self-regulation. And I believe if you look at, so when we're speaking about gas, we first and foremost, I believe, have to recognize that that's a broad word in itself. So when you talk about gas, you want to contextualize it. Are you talking about LPG or CNG or natural gas, and all that? So the issues when it comes to regulation are kind of different across those various sectors, but it is imperative that self-regulation is being played out across all those different expressions of gas, is what I like to call it. Now, if you look, for instance, in terms of natural gas, you will find that there is an imperative from the beginning for some sort of self-regulation in terms of a compliance with global best practices for safety and quality. I mean, like he did point out when Nuhu was talking, he mentioned the fact that when you say gas, you're talking about very big ticket type investments, huge infrastructure, many of which are designed to spec. So you don't see a lot of off-shelf inputs in the gas sector. You build to design, you build to project requirements and specifications. So when you think about the cost profiling, a lot of training goes into making sure that you have the right kind of manpower and capacity and systems and structures to support a self-regulated framework. Otherwise, your investment can go totally down the drain by just one simple act of error. Now, granted, we've seen a few things more recently in the LPG space, but these things tend to be individual occurrences that don't speak to the broader.
I'm connected.
That don't speak to the broader construct of safety in the country. And like you said, the LPG Association has done phenomenal work in trying to make sure that they come up with a self-regulatory framework, which is even more robust than what the government has. So I think that there is the place for the partnerships in terms of safety, in terms of quality, in terms of the policies and frameworks that make sure that those are adhered to. And we're seeing a lot more of those partnerships. We're seeing that the market is listening to the government is listening to the market. Most of the committees that are formed these days to look at these issues, they are very broad-based committees that encapsulate the key players in the industry, as well as very, very strategic positions in government. And I think it's working very well for the industry right now, whether you're talking LPG or you're talking natural gas or CNG, a lot of synergy, and we have to acknowledge that. Now, you asked about how we're working to increase gas adoption. I believe, generally speaking, that if we paid attention to what has been happening, every time you turn around, the gas narrative is on the table. And this is because, like I said earlier, as a country, we have come back to the place of acknowledging that strategic imperative to deepen the domestic gas market. And when you talk about the markets are there. The opportunities are there. It's now how we press in to make sure that we create a framework that enables those markets to thrive. And so whether it's the LPG expansion program or the national gas expansion program, the auto gas policy, we're seeing a lot of work. And over the past few years, it's been consistent in that regard. Now, NGA has partnered over the years. This has always been our key mandate, is to push for the adoption of gas as the primary and preferred fuel in Nigeria for economic development and diversification. And we've been relentless in pushing that mandate. So what this has meant is that we make ourselves available. We make our members, there's a sensitization that is constantly ongoing between ourselves, our members, and the government, looking at what the aspirations of the industry are, what the aspirations of the government are, and seeing how we, create that partnership framework. So there are many committees that have been set up, of which NGA has been a critical player over the last few years. So whether it was in terms of looking at the national gas policy, we were integral to the inputs and the outputs from that policy, the National Gas Transportation Network Code. We worked very closely with the ministry, with the DPR on that. We've worked very closely on issues in the power sector, whether it's about the ownership of the discos or looking at how to resolve power sector liquidity issues. We are in good partnership with the OPTS, which looks at the upstream side of the business. We in partnership with the IPPG, the Independent Petroleum Producers Group, that is more, also still upstream. We work very closely with Nuhu and the LPG Association, because ultimately from an NGA perspective, gas is gas. We're looking for how we enable gas development and commercialization across various markets. We work also very closely with the ministry, with the regulatory space. And so the National Gas Expansion Program, the Gas Pricing Committee, we have our foot in the things that matter, because we believe that if we get it right, and it's important for us to get it right, then there's a win-win for the nation and the economy. So like I said earlier, when you look at gas is a key resource, is a lever to industrialization, and industrialization is key for us as a nation because of the socioeconomic impact that we can mine out of that. So I think I'll just leave it to say that the opportunities are there. The investments need to come in. And so one of the things we as NGA do, we work a lot on the policy side to see how do we create those enabling frameworks? How do we support? So even when we see government is trying to come up with something, we want to touch base with industry and find out how would you respond to this? Because we need things that will work. When Nuhu was talking, he touched on something that I think is very critical in terms of looking at our markets. We're talking about availability, affordability, and the commerciality of supply. Now, most of the investments in the gas space are not investments that can be funded locally. Most of them we have to source for investment capital in the global world. So we need to be speaking to the creation of a framework that makes the industry attractive. We need to be looking at issues of security, securitization of assets, issues around the bankability of our projects, issues around the foreign exchange, the currency of the investment, and so on, issues around sanctity of contract. So where we see that there are gaps, we try to also then bring forth our own insights and inputs as to how we think those gaps can be closed. At least there are some quick wins, and I think the focus of the global industry now is about where are the quick wins, so that we can quickly see those investments begin to come to the table. Right? There's a lot of work that does go on, and I want to speak to very quickly my last comment about the issue about data. The comment that was made by one of the participants, that's a very, very cogent comment, because we have seen that there are too many data points in the industry. Sometimes you go to a conference, and in that same conference, 3 different people come with different sets of data about the same thing. So one of the things that NGA is working on is that global database for all the key data in the gas industry, so that if you're looking for information about something, you are sure that we're all speaking from the same data sets. So that's really important from a planning point of view, even for potential investments to be aware of. And we continue to seek partnerships from our members in terms of giving us some of those data to make sure that we are consistently updating and keeping that database live for the sake of the investing public. Thank you very much, Chola.
Thank you, ma'am. Those are several very important points. I particularly like the idea of a global database, so that we know exactly where to go when we're trying to confirm the data in any part of the industry. You also said the word framework quite a number of times, and I think it's important. You talked about it when talking about having the right legal and regulatory framework, the right partnership framework between government and industry players, the right framework that allows funding. And I think those are extremely important matters that, again, need even that we might not have all the time to delve into today, but that we need to address as much as possible. I'm going to turn over the floor right now to Mr. Additional. Mr. Additional, please, whilst taking us through the LPG expansion plan and how it's different, and how it interacts with the gas expansion program, I'd also like you to address a question I have from Mr. Taiwo Alege, which is to the effect that are there any efforts being made to ensure that LPG propane prices become more competitive by gas producers? It's still rather high. That question also ties into a comment made earlier by Mr. Olajuwon to the effect that despite all the efforts that they're still making, we can do better pricing for the property market. Mr. Additional, please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Finally. Okay, so the National LPG Expansion Implementation Plan was set up in 2017, essentially to carry out all the initiatives that were embedded in the National Gas Policy, which was approved by the FEC in 2017, early 2017, June to be precise. And the whole idea is to expand the market with a target of 5 million tons. Now, this 5 million tons is targeted at not just the domestic sector, which typically LPG is known for. Cooking is what you have that for, but also for things like auto gas, power generation, agriculture, and it's probably one of the most versatile products that you can come about. So we've had a couple of challenges that we thought needed to be addressed. Key to that would be the VAT, which was removed finally last year. Also, incentives on equipment. There's a presidential waiver, 5 years in the first instance, but renewable by another 5 years, which enables importers of LPG equipment to import without the duty. Another key incentive is the tax holidays for investors. But a very key aspect, and I know I missed out on a whole lot of some of the things that have been said in this session, is the aspects of the cylinder injection, which the government is looking at. Today, you have a market where everybody owns a cylinder. You have cylinders that are 20, 30 years old in the system, and that's a huge safety concern, especially if you want to deepen the market. You have to also look at issues of affordability, accessibility. And so going forward, the market has to change, and the government is keen to introduce a marketer-owned, cylinder-owned model rather than the customer cylinder-owned model that you have today. Aiding that would also be having the capacity to also refurbish cylinders, because if you look at the regulations regarding cylinders today, it states that 5 years after manufacturing a cylinder, that cylinder needs to be recertified. 10 years after manufacture, it needs to be requalified, and 15 years after, it needs to be scrapped completely. Now, like I said, I mean, you have cylinders that are 20, 30 years in the system, and we're just fortunate that we don't have as much problems from the cylinder side. And so we have to transit to a marketer cylinder-owned model where the government gets the cylinders, procures the cylinders, but distributes them through the marketers, because they're the closest people. The marketers and the retailers, they're the closest people to the last mile end user. For autogas, that's also a very key aspect for us. The regulation needs to be in place for that. Thankfully, there's been a review of the NIS 559, which would stick directly to autogas. And then there also needs to now be the standards for the kits and the standards for the workshops that do the certification. I mean, that does the modification to be able to convert. Now, without doing that, then you're going to run into problems. Safety is a big concern, like I said. And so we also need to look at issues of warranties and issues of insurance. And so we're looking at that closely, working with Standard Organization The certification of the kits, I'm sure the review of that would soon take place. And then we're also working with the insurance industry to try and see how we can bridge the issues of warranties. Now, there has to be a central registry for cars that are converted. And in the OEMs that we've spoken to, training is a huge aspect. And so if we don't get it right at the beginning, then there's no way we're going to be able to carry out that expansion. So for us, it's always very important that the start point is the aspects of safety that we look at. And so we're going to have a trial with 4 OEMs in country, and thereafter look at some of the other OEMs going forward. But the most critical aspect of this whole aspect of the LPG value chain is that the certification, all workshops have to be certified by SUN. All kits and equipment have to be certified before we can start. And that's why we pushed for certification for the actual product, the LPG itself. And I think it's mostly propane. Now, going to the aspects of the supply itself of the product and pricing. Now, LPG is a deregulated product, and so you've had the forces of demand and supply. And we believe strongly that we need to be able to push private sector and allow the forces of demand and supply to come into play. Now, today, LPG for a 20-ton parcel goes for about I think the last I saw was about 3,750 or 3,850, 3,850,000. There was a time when LPG was 4,500,000, almost 5 million. Now, because there are more players who have invested in infrastructure, in terminals, what you now see is competition. Now, that doesn't excuse the fact that there's not enough product coming in, which is why imports have taken a significant amount of the 970,000 tons that 927,000 tons that the market did last year. Out of that 970,000 tons, NLNG did 350,000 tons, and on their own, they've moved to 450,000 tons this year. What needs to happen is the reduction in the exports. Now, there are 3 main exporters today: NLNG, Chevron, and Mobil. It was okay when we didn't have a structured market, which was the excuse. But today, we know that even if we push out 2 million tons, the market will take it. And that's very crucial for us going forward. And that's the goal, to reduce significantly the exports, because there is a domestic market for this product. And so we have no reason to export. But this is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a gradual thing. And we started pushing for that. Moreover, because there's a structured market now, at least a market where investors like Audrey, who have been in the upstream space and who are now looking at downstream, it's easier for them to expand and invest further, knowing fully well that they don't have the hindrance that they have in the gas to power side of things in terms of regulation. So forces of demand and supply will bring down, and competition will bring down the pricing ultimately. What are we doing? We're also actively encouraging more upstream players. MPDC, I know, is likely to come in with about almost 240,000 tons. Green Energy, an upstream player, is also coming downstream to supply. Sterling, who is also an upstream player. So now that there's a structured market, at least that obstacle that we had before, where no one thought they could get value for the product and reinjected their gas or flared the gas, that is beginning to give way now. You're beginning to see people taking it more seriously. We're also working with the National Gas Flare Commercialization Program, because we believe there needs to be significant volumes coming from there. So ultimately, all these things would affect price. So I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Additional. But please hold. I'm still going to come back to you right away before I then come to Mr. Olatukusu. There's a number of things that I think are quite interesting, and one thing that I think is a bit of a paradox. So I want you to educate myself, our audience, a little bit on this. So I like particularly what you said about the new entrance. We talk about MPDC, I believe, Green Energy Sterling, who should increase domestic production, right? I believe, or the domestic supply. Now, you mentioned that a lot of the reason why we have pricing, why products is expensive in Nigeria is because a lot of the production, I believe you mentioned from LNG, I think one or two other producers is being exported, right? And we don't have enough being supplied into the market, despite there being a structured market. First of all, I would imagine that every government, every people should be happy about an export market for a product, particularly one that's even been processed from the crude that it came out of the ground as, right? So my question for you is, should we be restricting exports rather than expanding our domestic production and then additional entrants you mentioned are coming in? Because I'd imagine that the exporters are acting as rational business entities. Are they exporting despite being able to take the same kind of pricing locally? And remember that we've said that, look, it's important to find a way to get domestic pricing lower. And you mentioned that pricing has been dropping in Nigeria. I'm trying to understand the disjoint in those concepts.
Okay, so I think we should be doing both. I mean, if we have a need for a product here, then why do we export? If we don't stop the exports, then we lose foreign exchange by importing. I mean, ultimately, then we're the loser. So what's the point of all this having 202 TCF proven reserves and then 600 TCF unproven? We need to do both. We need to reduce the exports. We need to also encourage the domestic production. Now, the exports thrived because there was no domestic market. That was the excuse. Now that there's a domestic market, in fact, the pricing that we're still getting it domestically is benchmarked against the export market, which is Mont Belvieu. Now, thankfully, Argos is looking at the West African index, which, I mean, should give comfort to all the producers. But we need the volumes here. So I don't see any justification for exporting, especially if you're already benchmarking that export price against the local market. So we need to do both. We need to reduce the exports significantly. It was okay when the market wasn't at this level. But if as a government you say your target is 5 million tons, of that 5 million tons, at least 2 to 3 million must go to the households. We just sit back and start watching the same volumes go out of the country. And it's the same mistake we made with LNG. It wasn't a mistake at the time, but let me shock you further. 100% of the thermal stations in Portugal that gives them power runs 100% from the LNG volumes from Nigeria. And yet we don't have power here. So for me, that doesn't make sense. But it was okay at the time.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you,
so it was okay at the time because. Can I just finish this? I mean, it was okay at the time because we needed 25-year contracts, which typically would give you the guarantees for your investors that you had off-takers. So it was okay at the time that it was done. Now we need those volumes here as well. because, I mean, they're producers of gas. Yes, they can produce the LNG. They can still export. But there's also opportunity for domestic LNG as well, and I'm sure LNG is now looking at that. So I don't subscribe to the fact that we have something that we can use, and then we still have to fork out money to go and import the same product. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adeshino. We're going to hold that discussion, and if we have time, we'll come back to it. But I do believe that the solution isn't banning exports; it's increasing local production. But we'll come back to it in a minute. Let me go on to.
I never said ban exports. I said reduce exports.
I hear you, sir. We'll come back to it. I promise you, we'll come back to it if you have time. Otherwise, you and I will take on the conversation offline. Mr. Dakolatu also, please. I know you're a player in the downstream gas distribution business, right? Please let's know in practical terms how that business works from bulk importation, for example, or terminaling through to the retail market. And also, can you tell us some of the challenges that you identified as whether it's with yourself or with people that work for you in terms of just ensuring profitability of operations in the downstream LPG distribution business? Mr. Olatubosun. Okay, Mr. Olatubosun, please. Okay, whilst it seems that we've lost him again, and so whilst we're waiting for him, let me ask you, Mr. Additional, back to you. So if these three producers that we mentioned, for example, come on stream, right, are we saying that we're likely to get enough volumes to meet the need for the local market? Mr. Additional, that's your question.
Sorry, I lost you for a minute. What was the question?
So my question is that if the three producers that you mentioned, I know you said there might be a few more, come on stream with their LPG plants, right, production plants, are we likely to then have enough to meet the local market?
Sorry, it keeps cutting in and out, so I'm not getting the full question. I just heard, are we likely to get, that was the last thing I heard.
Okay, I think my question is, how much of our local production are we importing today? How much of that is likely to be filled by the producers that you say are upstream, green energy, sterling, for example?
Okay, so there's at least, yes, I mean, I think this year we've been averaging about 80,000 tons a month in spite of COVID, 80 to 90,000. But last month we did about 100,000 tons in total. So this year I think we definitely will go past the 1 million mark. And this is with terminals, a lot of terminals coming on stream. Rain Oil came on stream last month. I think Techno is about to come on stream, 12,000 tons. A couple more terminals that have opened up in the last 3 years. Prudent, Dozy is about to expand, or they've expanded to about 11,000 tons. Navgas also expanded. So at least in terms of the terminals, not a problem. Now on the domestic side, green energy, I think, I'm not sure, and I need to cross-check that, would probably be close to 80 to 100,000 tons a year. I know for a fact that sterling is about 120,000 tons. MPDC is about 240,000 tons. Pan Ocean should be at least about 120,000 tons as well. So in terms of the additional volumes that should come in from domestic, we're looking at least almost 500,000 to 600,000 tons. But that's in the short term. But I also know that there are a few more players that would come on stream next couple of years. Seplat, annual gas processing. I think Walter Smith, if the modular refinery is launched as well. But at the same time, I mean, it's important to show that there's a transparent market that would encourage investors to invest in putting up stripping plants. And we also need to look at some of the available gas from domestic gas supply, DGS, gas supply obligations, and see how we can encourage more investors to partner with the upstream players to process the gas and get LPG.
Okay, thank you, brother. Last question, my question is distribution of
Hello.
yes,
Hello. Yeah. The network hasn't been very friendly with us today. It's quite. So sorry about that. And actually, I missed a lot of presentation, but I think the key is just to round up one or two things that I needed to say, so to save time. Basically, the thing we are looking at has to do with LPG, gas market to assets. And I'll be talking from the perspective of LPG because that is basically what my association, what we deal with, liquefied petroleum gas, and I say how we can move it from be an asset into to market. These are various market opportunity that exist in the LPG. Years back in Nigeria, we see gas as liability, not as assets, because the primary focus was just to tap at the white products from the black gold, and we actually pay little attention to the gas aspect of it, and that is why it was being fly away, burning money. But in the recent time, we woke up to realize that we actually throw away gold, and there's a lot of resources that are being fly away. So we realize it's an asset, and it's an abundant asset that can really transform our country. And I thank God that we are getting to that one and we are moving forward. But the question is that there are various gases, natural gas and everything, like other presenters have just highlighted. But the basic here is the LPG as an asset to the nation and to us and also to investors. But what do we need to do to transform this asset into a real asset, fair marketing opportunities? The marketing opportunities in LPG are very diverse. But for the time management and to be precise, we look into it into three perspectives. Vis-a-vis the large scale aspect of it, the medium scale, and the lower scale, as we can transform gas into real assets and create a market for it. On the large scale, the aspect of the gas that we've not tapped now, which is very lacking, is in the area of pipeline. And someone mentioned something about pipeline the other time, but pipeline we are used to is for white products. But LPG also, we need a pipeline. If you have a very reliable pipeline, this time around from the private sectors, and I think Lagos and Ogun State and Oyo State can tap into that, then we can as well have what we call dry terminals. The congestions in Apapa will be reduced. Terminal doesn't need to go to Apapa to look for where the lands and be paying exorbitantly for the land, piling and all this sand filling. But if you have a line that runs from Jetty down to somewhere in Oyo State, then we can set up terminals, that dry terminal along the line, and you just connect it with the line. Then you pump and you pay according to the cubic of gas you pump, and that's a huge asset that everybody will benefit from. So from the private sector, I don't want to put it to government now, because government actually has no business in business. So it's only for them to create an enabling environment for people to be able to do that. So the private sector need to wake up and look into this angle, where we can set a line and dry terminals will come. It creates more jobs, it creates more opportunity, and the cost of construction will be reduced, significantly reduced. If a 1 billion naira needed to get land and surfacing, we be out of it. With that one, you're almost done with your terminal plant, and the gas will be available everywhere, just like we have while product at Monsimi and some other places, there are no coast around that place, but it was pipeline that were actually laid to their head somewhere in Ilorin. You can pump from Atelejokoya and get from Ilorin. So we can still do for LPG. That's a very huge investment, and it is going to be beneficial for everybody, and the return on it will also be very fantastic. So I think that area is lacking, and as area we need to tap onto. And at the medium scale, yes, a lot of the things have been done at the medium scale level. Plants have been springing up, terminals are coming. I think in Lagos alone, we have about 6 to 8 active terminals now. And that's a huge investment. Outside Lagos, down the east, mid-belt, south-south, terminals are coming up. Yes, we are doing very well in terms of mid-scale and the distribution goal. But the area of reticulation, the way we build our houses in Nigeria, we were not anticipating that this kind of development will come. But it's never too late. Estates are coming up now. You go to Lekki now, a lot of estates are coming. Any estate that has about 40 units of houses, they can plan for reticulation. Lay the pipe there, get it metered, and get a gas provider who will link up with the tank there, supply it through his bobtail or his bridger, and every house, you don't need to carry cylinders. So you cylinder free, the convenience will be there, and you'll be able to build them. So we should look into that perspective. It should be part of a law and part of investment we can enhance. Any estate developer that is coming now should have it as back of his mind. How do I power these people for their cooking? So reticulation is another opportunity. And a lot of us have a role to play here, because if you have an estate and you manage an estate, you contact a gas provider that can be agreed to you, supplying your gas to your estate, meter it, and I know how much it is. So it creates employment for me, it creates employment for others. It's more to add to convenience, and that area is not well tapped right in a way. Not quite everybody know that, and those are kind of other markets that we can take out of this huge asset that we are looking at. Another perspective is issue of, I think, and I had Dayo when he was talking about auto gas and all this. Yes, the awareness is coming now, but it hasn't really started to the full level. And this is a huge investment area that can really turn our economy around. By the time we go into use of CNG, auto gas, and packaging of gas for home use, or all this lighter and everything, is a huge of assets that create a lot of employment. It creates a lot of wealth. And we will see that we will actually make more money. And it has also been proven that gas that we have in this country, it is even enough to meet our expenditure, total national expenditure, if well managed. So there's no need for running after black gold, crude oil. The juice is actually gas, and we have abundant gas, but it's meant for us to identify these useful areas and direct investors, create an enabling environment for them so that they can put their stake there and they will invest, and it have a multiplier effect that we actually move the economy on. So those are the way that we can do into that. Now coming to the lower level, because that is the critical issue we have in Nigeria now, because you have a lot of youth complain of unemployment. But how do we turn this gas to an asset that will benefit our youth? There are abundant opportunities which some of them are not actually tapping. Take, for instance, plants are all over. If you have a youth that you give a tricycle, you go there, camp for the cylinder, come to the plant, refill, I pay you a commission. In a day, the young guy may be cruise home with about 1,300, in some cases 2,000. And a festival period, you can make 5,000 a day. He'll be able to meet his daily bread. That's soft unemployment in that angle. Then there are some other, this kiosk. The guideline has just make a provision for kiosk now, where you can drop your cylinder and buy. This is where the young Nigerians can key in and they meet their daily bread. But all these opportunities, nobody is looking at that side. We all think of white collar job. Meanwhile, there are gold that we have in-house that we are not actually tapping. So these areas should be broadened and everybody should get involved and bring a lot of people into the net so we can really tap the opportunity of the assets in which gas is really into. However, all this we are talking about may not become so easy. There are some other things that has to be laid down. Legislation, investor protection is quite key. And I wouldn't know, like I missed the greater part of the presentation, well, because of the data issue I had here. Maybe the moderator has actually got into area with the second part of the discussion, and that would be dovetail into what can we do to actually identify all these things we say are possibilities. What are things that you needed to put in place? Because if you want to lay a pipe, if you don't have legislation, you don't have enabling environment, you don't have peace, you don't have security, nobody wants to put a stake. And these are huge investments. So if there are no laws backing it, it will become an issue. The second one is that if you don't protect people, it is very easy to invite people to come and invest. But you must protect them so that they will earn return on their investment. Take, for instance, when some of us are coming to retail, building of gas plant, government were actually canvassing, trying to explain to people the importance of this. But some of people have invested right away. There are some other policies coming in that may also affect their market. So if we don't guide right in terms of provision and protecting the investor, some will be discouraged because they wouldn't have earned the fruit of their investment to fullest by the time there's another counter-productive one. So we need to be articulate, we need to plan it very well so that people that are putting their stake, they earn their returns and they continue in business while others are still coming to join. So regulation is key. And conducive environment is important. We need peace in this country. Nothing but peace, peace, peace for any investment to grow. For any opportunity we have to tap it. For us to turn any market into asset, there must be peace and stability. That's very critical. And the support from government is also important in terms of power and some other things. I think, let me just put a hold to it there now. Maybe if I have the opportunity again, we can be talking about second part of it and what other opportunity that we can turn gas. We can actually make gas to turn to gold to us. Thank you.
Mrs. Joy Zibo. So Mr. Olatubosun mentioned about the need, for example, for residential estates, multi-user residential estates to, as part of the planning and development, have central reticulation for LPG. My question is, and I don't know whether it's before our times today, but essentially, I know that also your company has done some investment in bringing natural gas to industry and power plants around Ikorodu. Are we too far away from a regime where we're also encouraging reticulating our cities so that gas for domestic use, for example, is delivered via pipelines rather than trucks running all over the place? Or are the issues too complex? This is something that we're not going to be able to manage for some time in Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you, Shola. We are certainly very far away. And if we want to face our truths, then we might as well face them head on. Now, there are many issues that come with the reticulation of gas to households and estates. So especially now when you're talking about LPG, that's easier to do because you are now talking about where you can use, like Mr. Olatunbo also pointed out, you can use the bobtails and go and deliver to estates that will have their own mini storage facilities and then pipe to all the homes in the estate. But if you're talking about natural gas, for instance, pipeline gas, then that becomes a totally different conversation because the cost of the infrastructure the economics will not pan out when you consider the kinds of volumes that will be offtaken by the homes. And that is why the focus is on the industrial sector. We actually, as the company Falcon, almost 15 years ago, we looked at trying to do a rectification project into an estate. And I know that there's one estate in the I think it's in the Ikeja Oba axis where they actually had like a pilot reticulated estate for gas, but there are several issues. So when you think about like I said, the cost of the infrastructure, Mr. Latif also pointed out a huge issue, which is in terms of urban and regional planning, right? We've had, even in the industrial sector, some of the challenges we had when we first started to deploy our pipelines in 2005 was that there was some underground infrastructure which even the government agencies were not aware of. So we were practically working blind in terms of underground infrastructure. Then when you look at the homes, the way we build, the way we site different things is very badly planned. So for you to be able to justify putting what will turn out to be billions of naira in the ground, and then you look also at lifestyle issues. Let me take a typical city like Lagos, where I live. Now, Lagos, you and I know if you live in Lagos, by 4 a.m. the roads are busy. Everybody is out and we're heading to the other end of town to go make our living with traffic and all that, we don't come home to the end of the day. What that means is that if I were to do a pipeline into certain areas, expecting that people will be off-taking my gas for their ACs, for their fridges, for their power generation, generally speaking, then for the bulk of the day, nobody will be pulling on that gas. Therefore, when I look at the numbers, unless I have extremely deep pockets and I have the capacity to be patient over a very long-term period, and with all the vagaries we see in the economy, with inflation, with interest rates and all that, I promise you it doesn't make any sense. Now, what it means, however, is that the more we focus on developing our infrastructure, the delivery infrastructure to the larger volume of takers where the economics makes sense, the more we leverage on the virtual technologies that are available, the more as a people we also then paying attention to development, maybe in the newer areas, we would then have a more robust network of main gas transportation lines that it becomes easier to tee off into estates and residential areas, and then the economics make sense. But for us to get the kind of depth of markets that is our requirement now, honestly, when it comes to natural gas for homes, we are very far from them. I don't think it should be our focus. I think we should focus on the larger ticket type of where you have more impact. So if it is auto gas, we know that we can get more of our vehicles running on auto gas. What facilities are required to channel that? If it is LPG, yes, we know we can get into where there are reticulated estates supported by the tank farms and the LPG supply sources that we have. If it is in terms of CNG, the same thing. If it's in terms of LNG, we are seeing there's the Greenville project, and LNG is also looking at DOM LNG. By the time you have a lot of these kinds of projects springing up and making sense to the investors, especially in the face of the many other challenges that mar the investment landscape in Nigeria, it becomes easier for someone to look at a certain area and determine, okay, it is worth my while to do a marginal play by channeling pipeline gas into certain areas. Also, and I'll make this my last point at this time, there is a huge need for an education and re-education of the populace, because you see, when you do a project and you have to do collections across many people, that's part of the problem in the power sector now. Everybody wants power, not many people are willing to pay. It's the same thing then we've seen when we were trying to do gas to estates. The biggest part of the problem for us was actually people's willingness and ability to pay. Many times ability will be there, willingness is another conversation. And if you can't guarantee your collections, having made those kinds of investments, then it just negates the effort. So I think that even on the side of the public, who will be the ultimate beneficiaries, there is need for that education and re-education to say, look, there are benefits to you getting natural gas, be it in forms of direct LPG or LNG or whatever form of gas to support your power or heating or cooling, whatever it is in your homes, in your businesses. But you must be committed to do your own bit to sustain the investment so that the investors don't go under, and so that it's an attractive enough area for other people to then come in and create that kind of competitive landscape that you, the end user, benefits from. So this is part of, for NGA, we say that one of our key mandates is to deepen the public's awareness of gas. And it's through enlightenment, through business fora, through conferences and events, through pushing out articles and information, through being present at these kinds of events as well, that we try to help people to see that, look, there is an ultimate benefit, but it's all not on the government, it's all not on the investor. The end users to have a role to play in making sure we have a dynamic and thriving gas industry in Nigeria. Thank you, Shola.
Thank you, Mom. Our time is very fast spent. I have the time to take one or two questions from our audience. So please, if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A box. Mr. Alajuwon, my next question is for you. And you did talk about some experience in the automotive gas business in Kenya and in Ghana. My question is, what are you seeing in the policy and regulatory framework in those countries that's different from what you and any other country where you have experience that's different from what you're seeing in Nigeria, and what because I would imagine that the investment in the infrastructure to support fueling cars with other vehicles with gas would be a lot. My understanding of the current market is that the companies that are currently doing it are big industrials that have a fleet of several trucks. So my question is, what are you seeing in policy in other places that might help in adopting and greater adoption in Nigeria? And is that something you expect to see anytime soon?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the major issue is the price. You see, pricing is very important in terms of auto gas for LPG, for instance. CNG is good. We have CNG for 19 naira per ATM, which is lovely. It's a 1-to-1 match with diesel. We don't have issue with that. Yeah, due to COVID, the price of diesel has dropped. But worldwide, it has always been LPG, more of LPG powered cars in the world, But the issue we have in Nigeria is, for instance, in Ghana now, a liter of petrol is about 400 something naira, So it's a direct or obvious decision for people to switch to gas, which is about 3.2 Ghana cedis, which is half the price. In Nigeria, again, like what Mr. Additional mentioned about the price, we've had about three. We had Techno, we had Rain Oil, and which other one has come up? Stock Gap. So we've had three different depots that has been added to the ones we have, and still the price has not crashed. We were expecting the price crash, but when you start selling LPG at a price that it's not favorable for auto gas, it's impossible at all for it to fly. So what we are now saying is, should we adopt propane for commercial use for auto gas, which I think is the best option. I don't know. I'm just a businessman. But for me, that's the best option. But if we adopt propane, then most of these key tanks that you have in filling stations, some of them will have to change to propane because you can't put the same one for cooking gas, which is a butane propane mix. And again, you said, the next loading will be propane. It's not going to work. So are we going to have a dedicated propane ski tanks within the forecourt of a filling station? It doesn't have to be big. And there's one thing we need to know. Not all filling stations are viable for auto gas. And the good news is most auto gas stations are not going to be good for cooking gas anyway. So there's going to be in 5 stations, maybe 1 or 2, we have the same opportunity to sell for cooking and for auto gas. The transport companies, which are our number one market for the use of gas as an alternative for fueling their vehicles, they don't need the gas within town. They need it linking states. So the likes of Lagos about the expressway, they want it there, or interchange, they want it there, So who is going to sell LPG to cooking gas in Lagos is about the expressway? No. So that is automatic auto gas market. So we need to understand the concept. We are soliciting and advocating for propane. Pricing is also good. Then the question is, how much is price for LPG? A byproduct. How much are you going to sell LPG that you're going to say you're selling at loss? One of the major companies that is coming up next month in Kwale, we talked about the byproduct, propane. How much are they going to sell? Are we looking at selling at a price that is viable, or are we looking to push volume? 12.5 kg, which will last you and I at home maybe 3 to 4 weeks. All I need to Ibadan and back is a 12.5 kg. So there's a potential of me going back to a filling station more regular than he or she that is buying for cooking. So will you want to sell to me at the same price as you're selling to someone that is cooking and that will not come to your station in 4 weeks? Those are the questions that we need answers to, But again, we had issue with refueling. We were buying at Bana, but again, you won't expect Nuhu to sell at a loss because he has to sell. So we don't want to go in a position whereby we are fighting with cooking gas. No, auto gas is too big to be at the mercy of cooking gas. Auto gas should be on its own. And if you want to sell for cooking gas, go and sell for cooking gas. If we want to promote auto gas, propane is the best. How can we adopt propane to encourage the use of gas? Some of these filling stations that are selling for cooking gas, they have to switch if they want to. And some of these filling stations, they've got space of an extra installation of a skid tank to adopt propane. Then we have issue whereby people say, oh, but they will end up selling propane in the cylinder and all of that. Then I'll say common sense, for goodness sake, most of the cylinders are propane rated, but how do we manage it? Everybody will be responsible for us. We will be responsible for our own logistics. Will be responsible, and for autogas, from a depot, for instance, LPG leaves the depot in a bobtail on a bridger. It goes in another tank, which is a storage tank. From that tank, it goes straight into the car. So there's no any opportunity of obstructing the channel of distribution. And from the car, you get used to burn the car and to power the car. So there's a whole lot that we need to put in place. The trucking system, the likes of Nigeria LNG taking most of these gas abroad, like what Mr. Adesina said. We need those gas in Nigeria. We need them. We need the consumption. There's a huge consumption that we can have that we don't need to sell abroad. The last meeting we had with Nigeria LNG 2 years ago, they said they are not going to sell in Naira, and I understand. The market, people are buying gas. It's expensive as far as I'm concerned, it is, but people are still buying it. So are we now saying the guy selling butane propane mix should sell at loss, or should we just forget about that and just focus on propane? And that's for LPG. For CNG, we have the likes of power gas compressing from our Falcons facility in Ikorodu. They can do that and put CNG in the system. We have the likes of NIPCO along the road of Lagos about the expressway. They can sell CNG there. We have up on Benin. Then we have the likes of Greenville that can regasify LNG to give us LCNG up north. So we don't promote CNG for smaller cars. CNG will look at the option of trucks because they can have more than one storage facility. So, for instance, now the minimum we can put for a CNG truck is maybe 600 liters capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olajumo. I'm so sorry to come in mid sentence, but we're almost running out of time. I wish we had another hour to discuss the many critical issues that still need to be touched upon. OTL Downstream Africa will be sending us out of there in about 10 minutes. So we need to begin to do our wrap up. I did see a comment from Mr. Atawa Adage in the Q&A box that perhaps one of the things that would address the issues you're talking to will be government mandating and enforcing the use of dual-fueled vehicles. You've also said something that's extremely important and that would require some addressing. Unfortunately, we won't have the time to do all of that today. We're rounding up. I'm going to want each of our panelists to give closing remarks. It's been a very interesting session. I believe we've had ideas that need to be explored further with ideas. I think the one thing that we've heard that's quite clear is that there are opportunities in the market. Yes, as with every part of doing business, anywhere in the world really, particularly in Nigeria, there's some challenges and there's some policy and fiscal initiatives that industry players will want government to address. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over again to my panelists. Firstly, Mr. Adesina, please, in no more than 2 minutes, give us your closing remarks. I would love if there's a chance you can address some of the questions that Mr. Olajuwon raised about pricing for LPG. But please, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Carry on.
Oh, right. Okay, so with everything, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail for sure. This is a long journey that with proper planning we will get to where we want to go to. And the good thing is that the government is acting as that enabler. Specific to Juan's statements on pricing, if you recall that I said there are a whole lot of things that we needed to do in the auto gas space. If it's not structured properly, it's a chicken and egg situation. The person is going to roll out infrastructure to even refill. Would like to see the amount of cars that you've put in place, that you've converted. So it's a chicken and egg situation. And if he doesn't have the right policies in place, and if we don't have the right conversion workshops, conversion kits, and all that, then it's a disaster waiting to happen. So I think the approach of starting first with the standards, having the right kits, and he can attest to he's shown me 2 Peugeot cars that they converted, I think it was about 2 years ago. At the time, the price was 194 naira per liter when they calculated it. I think they did it up in Kaduna. But if we don't have more volumes coming in, and if we don't have more operators seeing that there's a value chain that can be profitable for them if they invest, then you're not going to get that competition that will bring the prices down and more volumes coming in, which is what needs to happen. We need to also educate a lot of people because the kits are not cheap, the conversion kits for the vehicles. And that's why the equipment being duty-free is critical. Now, it's one thing for the government to do that. The enforcement of that at the ports coming in is a different thing entirely. So it's a staged and a phased approach that we need to do. There's a lot of investment opportunities in that space, and I'm sure, especially with enlightenment, because you need to also train significantly a whole lot of people. Don't get me wrong, a whole lot of the regulators are not too conversant with autogas. And so we also need to deal with warranty issues as well. So, but going forward, I think with the approach that we've taken on the implementation plan, we definitely will get there in the shortest possible time frame, because Nigerians are entrepreneurs, and once they catch on, for sure, it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Additional. Mr. Yakubu, the OTL has been gracious enough to grant us an additional 5 minutes. So, yes, we're still challenged for time. But I had a question I wanted you to address coming out of Mr. Olajo's previous remarks. And I'm asking this question in the context of you playing in the LPG market, also playing in the gas to power. Is mentioned about essentially differentiated pricing, the price to domestic LPG consumption as against LPG for transportation. There's also been quite a bit of, I believe, advocacy of late as to the need to be transparent in the gas regime generally, including why some gas, for example, whether it be to power or to industry, is treated and priced differently than gas to other sectors. What are your views on this? And then once you've given us your views, you can also give us your closing remarks.
Okay, your line was cracking, but I hope I got your question. But let me take it from the last one. On the gas pricing, we can't afford at this stage to begin to segregate on pricing of gas for this purpose and for that purpose. It just doesn't. It creates distortion, and we're not a country that know how to manage those things very well. So it's an open, it's a willing buyer, willing seller market. It's a fully deregulated market, and I believe that we, the key operators in the industry, believe that with the deepening of the market, the price of the product will always continue to be very competitive. So autogas is still new. We and my company, Banner Energy, were in the space. We have done quite a number of autogas conversions. Yes, the technology is not very well known yet, so we are trying our best to train as many technicians as possible. But for as many vehicles that will convert to use of autogas to deepen the market, it will help to lower the price of autogas as it any other gas for that matter. But I also like to mention here that a key stimulant for the auto gas market will be government intervention. The auto gas conversion kits are not cheap. You heard Mr. Adesina say earlier. When we started these auto gas conversions 8-10 years ago, it was landing at less than 100,000 naira. Today, the recent ones I just I sold out to some of my clients was over 300,000 naira or thereabout for auto gas, because exchange rate has really impact the market, jumpstart the market by injecting the same way we're planning to inject cylinders into the market. There has to be a program for auto gas to kickstart the market if you want that switch to be spontaneous, or to be if you want to trigger that switch. And then for reticulation, Mrs. Ezigbo has said it all. Is a function of demand. If there's no substantial demand in an estate community, it just doesn't make economic sense for you to embark on reticulation. The volume domestic consumption of gas is very minimal compared to industrial. That's why there's a lot of focus on industrial gas. I don't know if I've touched on the questions you asked because your line was cracky. But there's any other one I would like to. But I would like to my party notes will be on levies. Levies have become a problem, is becoming a threat for all of us in the sector. If that is not addressed very, very urgently, it's going to pose a big barrier to whatever gains we think we have gained so far. We can't have a situation where the incentives are given, fiscal incentives and policy incentives are given by government, and on one hand, and on the other hand, they are imposing levies that will take away the benefits of those incentives. And particularly is a raging issue right now of one of the agencies, PPPRA's levies, which we're asking government to reverse. And I hope if there are government people in the audience today, please, I would like you to quickly do something about reversing those levies so that we can lower the entry barrier for people who want to switch over to use of gas. Nigerians are already battered enough the way it is. We can't be levying more and more, and then it also doesn't help the competitiveness of gas against the fuels I want to switch from. So levy is a big issue, and we should please do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yakubu. And yes, you did address all my questions. I apologize for the quality of the connection. Mr. Olatubosun, please, your closing remarks. Mr. Olatubosun, closing remarks, please. Your microphone is muted.
I think, my closing remark, the network hasn't been very friendly today, but notwithstanding, my closing remark is just a simple one. First and foremost, let's thank OTL for this opportunity. I think it's a yearly event, and I think they should keep on doing good job they are doing. The whole world is actually appreciating them. Key two is I want to talk as the closing remark, as a take home for this one. Before I identify a lot of aspect opportunity in gas, but we need to domesticate our gas in Nigeria. What we are losing by terms of importing gas into this country is massive. In terms of foreign exchange, in terms of employment opportunity, if we have gas we are producing in this country domesticated here, it will solve a lot of problems. Even the pricing we are talking will come down because the freight will be out of it. Exchange rate volatility will be out of it. And we have this in abundance in this country. If you have about 3 people that are exporting, why not selling to the local market, maybe about 70% of their production, and take the remaining 20% of 1 million now, and we are still growing. So the consumption is growing, and if it is growing, then we should try to domesticate it. The second issue is about protection of investment. That is very, very key. It will be unfair for us to would investor to come into this industry and without protecting their investment. So government need to do more in terms of laws, acts, and enabling environment. So I will hold the government. Then I'll talk about cylinder injection. Basically, it's this infrastructure we need government to provide in terms of support for infrastructure. People will actually get their cylinders. There are a lot of people that are manufacturing cylinders in this country. The price will come down if we have the right infrastructure in place. Government should put effort into enabling environment that will encourage investors to invest more. The more they come, the for this
Mr.
opportunity.
Yakubu, you are going to have to find more
Network hasn't been fair, moderator. It's cracking
So
here.
we're rounding up your remarks. Okay. Let's go to Mr. Olajuwon for your closing remarks. 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My closing remark is just going to be surrounded by what we've been advocating for years. Gas for vehicular use is possible. It's safe, and can go a long way in saving running costs. Also, there's so many conversion kits out there, and we have to leave the conversion process to professionals. Like Noah has rightly said, he's been in the business for 10 years. He's done some conversion. Due respect to that. But again, we need to work with those that are good at it. You know, I'm always very positive in the use of the right kits. And again, a car that is not good on petrol will never be good on gas. So we've had people bring cars to us and say, "Oh, can these be converted to run on gas?" Some cars cannot and will never be converted to gas, and there's quite a few of them in Nigeria because of the standard and because of the situation they are in. So gas for vehicular use is achievable. LPG, they are all allocated to the right. CNG ones allocated to the right engines as well. We can achieve that. One of the issues that we also have with conversion is loss of power, and this is down to advancement of technology. And the last thing we want to do is to convert a car and the user starts seeing engine light coming up. For people like us, we know why engine light is coming up, because once there's a misfire, that triggers the engine light. So there's quite a lot of things. But again, this is down to standard of the conversion kits. And I'm glad Mr. Additional has mentioned on standardization of these kits and ensuring we don't just flood the market with substandard conversion kits. So gas is available in Nigeria. Gas is good for conversion of engines to run on cleaner, smoother, and reduces servicing power for these engines. Infrastructure is very important. If there's no infrastructure, autogas will never, or NGV will never succeed. Also, after sales market is very important. One of the issues NIPCO had in Benin is after sales market, because we've realized that once they've converted those cars in Benin, the guys take it to normal mechanics, and any issue that comes up with the car, the mechanic, without knowing, will say, now this guy's where you put inside. I ain't cause you understand? So that's where most of these guys have been taking out those gas components, you know, and that's not the reason. So again, how do we educate the market that, okay, these cars are safe with the owners once this installation has been made? So there's quite a lot of education that needs to be done there, and it's our job, all of us, to see how we can work things out. And also, a very important thing is most of these filling station owners, they miss the point. In the north, one of the biggest guys, I met him in Kano, and I said to him, Alaji, you need to adopt LPG in your filling station. And he said to me, Abdul, now part of said gas, said petrol. In a nutshell, if I start selling gas, I will lose on selling petrol. But that's the mentality. And I said to him, Hakaba, it's not going to be that way. The approach is, when you start selling gas and your sales of petrol reduces, it's because your sales of gas has increased. So you're not bringing new players into the market. It's the existing guys that are making switch. So it's the same way we adopt kerosene, diesel, we can also adopt gas, and the same players will be selling these. So there's a whole lot that needs to be done, and I believe with the right team, which we have a lot of you guys there that can support us, we will succeed, and the government will also support. So yeah, we're going to make it work. We know how to do it, and we will support all the moves, and we hope for the best in the future, and to progress in the use of gas as an alternative. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'm pleased and honored to be part of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olajuwon. Mrs. Joe Ezigbo, closing remarks. Please, you have 2 minutes thereabouts. And I would like particularly for you to tell our audience about the benefits of joining the Nigerian Gas Association.
Thank you, Shola. Yes, thank you. For very robust discussions today. In closing, I would like to say that where I started at the beginning is what I think we must all keep right in front of us, which is that gas, there are very robust, very significant strategic benefits to Nigeria leveraging on its gas resources, both in terms of building resilience in the economy, diversifying the economy, creating employment, leveraging on power. Just there's so much of a multiplier effect, and everyone has spoken to that. But underpinning this is the social imperative to create the industries and the outlets that then provide employment and a better standard of living for all Nigerians. And I think that is very key. I also want to say that much as there are a lot of opportunities that have been highlighted in the discussions today, and even more so within the entire gas value chain, is the fact that the investing world has to be paying attention to us, and this is as Nigerians, looking for where we can plug in and looking for where we can then scale. And scale then would be coming from the point of view of collaborations and partnerships across the value chain. That's the way we will see significant results. But on the side of the government is the continuous appeal. I know a lot of work is going on, and we must always acknowledge that. But the significant appeal I want to make today is reminding ourselves that if we as Nigerians continue to tell the story to ourselves about what a great investment haven we are, without actually dealing with some of the legacy challenges we have in the sector, dealing with some of the constraints to investment, and then, creating the enabling regulatory policy and legislative frameworks that will enable those investments to come in, then we will only be telling ourselves the same narrative and not seeing the results. We must be able to ask ourselves, between 2008, when we had the National Gas Master Plan, the National Gas Supply Pricing policy and all that. So between then and now, why have we not moved forward the way those documents encapsulated the plans? Why haven't we been able to achieve significant mileage on the national gas infrastructure blueprint from that 2008? And then say to ourselves, clearly, some things must fundamentally change. We are all competing for the same global capital, and global capital is not emotional. It looks for returns. Therefore, to make the investment narrative a reality, the language from the point of view of government must be about incentivization, securitization, enabling frameworks to bring those monies in to support the gas sector. And then in terms of what the NGA is doing and why people should be members. So first of all, like I said earlier, we are the voice of gas in Nigeria. We are the voice that is speaking to the issues in the upstream, the midstream, the downstream, to the producers of the gas, to the end users of the gas. We are the voice that tries to create regional linkages and international partnerships between those who are interested in coming into the Nigerian gas space, as well as then our local investors who want to have a bigger play in gas. We are working with the government, we are working with the private sector to try to enable the right policies and all that to be put in place. We are also the greatest network of gas practitioners in the country, and of course also giving the Nigeria a better voice on the global gas play as a chartered member of the International Gas Union. Therefore, for anyone who is looking to invest in gas, for anyone who is looking to have a better understanding about issues in the gas sector, then membership of the NGA is an add-on to help you to achieve that objective. And it's very easy. Our website is up. or you can reach out to me on various social media platforms. NGA has its own social media platforms, and we can send you the registration information. So thank you again to OTL for this opportunity. And my distinguished panelists, always a pleasure to engage with you, gentlemen. God bless you all. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam. We're completely out of time, and I think Madam has, Mrs. Joy Zibo has essentially wrapped up for me. I think I'll leave us with two things, really. One is the fact that we think our domestic gas market is so underserved that at least two of our panelists have talked about the possibility of potentially restricting exports so that we're sure we're able to get enough product into the market. I think that what that suggests is that there's a significant investment opportunity in that market. The other bit is the need for education, educating government and the regulator, educating investors and financiers, and very importantly, educating the market to generate better adoption. Let's not get into a place where the attitude is that the gas where you put cost, there is opportunities, there's benefits for everyone to have more gas adoption. So my very distinguished panelists, I say thank you again. Thank you for the very engaging discussions this afternoon. OTL, Downstream Africa, ARS Conference Services, thank you for giving us this platform. And everyone, audience as well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. I believe it's 2 hours very well spent. And everyone, please have a very good afternoon. Bye-bye.